My name is David, and I was a good husband once. I used to believe in the sanctity of marriage, in the vows we made on that bright summer day, under the watchful eyes of our friends and family. I believed in love, in loyalty, and in the warmth of the woman I married. But things change, don't they? Over time, the love we shared morphed into something unrecognizable. The passionate nights turned into cold silences, and the warmth we had once wrapped ourselves in became a distant memory. I could feel it slipping away, bit by bit, every day, but I never imagined it could come to this. I started noticing the small things first. The way she would smile at her phone, the late-night texts she tried to hide, the sudden interest in her appearance. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was just a phase, a rough patch like any other marriage goes through. I wanted to believe that so badly, to cling to the remnants of what we had. But the truth has a way of creeping in, no matter how hard you try to shut it out. I followed her one day, telling myself it was just to ease my mind, to prove that I was being paranoid. I trailed her from our home, down to the little coffee shop on the corner, where she met him. He was younger, taller, with a confident smirk that made my stomach turn. They didn't see me. They were too wrapped up in each other, too busy whispering, laughing, touching. It was like a knife in my gut, twisting deeper with every passing moment. That night when she came home, I couldn't bring myself to confront her. I sat there watching her move around the kitchen, making dinner like everything was normal. I kept thinking about how easy it was for her to lie, how seamlessly she slid back into the role of the loving wife, all the while knowing she had another life, another man. The betrayal was like a slow poison, eating away at me from the inside. I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to her, feeling the distance between us grow, even as our bodies touched under the covers. I thought about the years we had spent together, the memories we had built, and how all of it had been tainted by her betrayal. By the time the sun began to rise, I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I took a long, hard look at myself in the mirror. The man staring back at me was not the same man who had walked down the aisle all those years ago. He was a stranger, with cold eyes and a heart full of rage. I didn't recognize him, but I understood him. I knew that from this moment on, everything would change. I stand in the bathroom staring at my reflection in the mirror. The man I see is a stranger, eyes hollow, jaw clenched, hands trembling slightly. I've been consumed by a maelstrom of rage and humiliation since discovering the affair. My mind can't let go of the images I saw, the way she looked at him, the way she touched him. The thought of it fuels the fire burning inside me. I can't sit back and be the victim anymore. It's time to take control, to turn the tables. I decide to call the one person who would understand, someone who's seen the darkest sides of humanity and hasn't flinched. I pick up my phone and dial Mike, my old combat buddy. We've shared things in the past that most people wouldn't understand, things that have forged an unbreakable bond between us. When he picks up, I waste no time. Mike, I need your help, I say, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. He doesn't ask why, doesn't probe for details. What's going on? I tell him everything. The affair, my anger, my plan. He listens without interrupting, just like he did when we were in the thick of it, back in the desert, where survival depended on trust and silence. What do you want to do about it? He finally asks. I want to make him pay, I say, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. I need to make him feel what I'm feeling. Mike is silent for a moment. When he speaks again, his voice is calm, methodical. I'm in. We'll need to plan this out. Be smart about it. You can't afford to make any mistakes. I breathe a sigh of relief, the first I've taken since this whole nightmare began. I know, I say. I want to make sure he doesn't see it coming. We spend the next few hours discussing the details. Mike suggests using a sedative, something strong enough to knock him out but not kill him. It's a calculated move, one that will give us control over the situation. I agree, knowing it's the right call. We need him alive, at least for now. By the time we're done, the plan is set. I feel a strange sense of calm, a cold, clear focus that sharpens my thoughts. I know what needs to be done, and I'm ready to do it. The next few days pass in a blur. I go through the motions of everyday life, pretending everything is normal, but inside I'm seething, counting down the hours until I can set my plan in motion. I watch her closely, noting her routines, her patterns. I find out where they meet, how often. It's almost too easy, the way they flaunt it in front of me, thinking I'm too blind to see. Finally, the day comes. I follow him from his office to the little cafe where they always meet. I sit in my car, watching from a distance, waiting for the right moment. When she leaves, I know it's time. I follow him as he walks to his car, parking just a few spots away. My heart is pounding in my chest, but my hands are steady as I reach for the small vial of powder in my pocket. I've done my research, found the perfect dose. It'll knock him out for hours, enough time for what I have planned. He stops at a convenience store, and I seize the opportunity. I slip in behind him, careful not to draw attention. When he's distracted, I move in close, pretending to bump into him. As I apologize, I let the powder slip from my hand into his drink. A simple sleight of hand. He doesn't notice a thing. I step back, watching as he takes a sip, then another. It doesn't take long. By the time he reaches his car, he's already starting to wobble. I hurry over, pretending to offer help. He slumps against me, barely conscious. I guide him to my car, shoving him into the back seat. My hands are steady, my mind clear. I drive to the location Mike and I agreed on, a secluded spot in the woods, far from prying eyes. Mike is already there when I arrive, waiting with the trunk of his car open. We drag him out, laying him on the ground. He's out cold, just as planned. Mike looks at me, his expression unreadable. "You ready for this?" I nod, but there's a knot in my stomach. I push it down, telling myself this is what needs to be done. I can't back out now. We bind his hands and feet, making sure he can't move even when he wakes up. Mike hands me the bat, the weight of it solid in my grip. I stare down at him, at the man who's taken everything from me. The rage bubbles up, threatening to spill over, but I force myself to stay calm. I take a deep breath, raising the bat. The first swing is the hardest, the sound of bone cracking echoing in the stillness of the night. I feel a sick satisfaction, a sense of justice being served. I swing again and again, each hit driving home the reality of what I'm doing. But as the night wears on, the satisfaction begins to wane, replaced by something else. Doubt creeps in, gnawing at the edges of my resolve. I look down at him, his face bloodied, his body broken, and I feel a pang of guilt. What have I become? Mike must sense my hesitation because he steps forward, taking the bat from my hands. "You've done enough," he says, his voice low. "We need to get out of here before he wakes up." I nod, too numb to argue. We drag him back to my car, dumping him in the back seat. I drive in silence, my mind racing. What am I doing? What have I done? I drop him off near his apartment, making sure he's in a place where someone will find him. As I drive away, I feel a strange emptiness, a hollow pit where my rage used to be. The adrenaline is wearing off, leaving me with nothing but the cold, hard reality of what I've done. I return home, slipping back into the role of the dutiful husband. She's there, waiting for me, but I can't look at her. I can still feel the bat in my hands, the way it connected with his bones, the way his blood splattered on the ground. I lie in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events in my mind. I thought this would make me feel better, that it would give me some sense of closure, but all I feel is a deep, gnawing regret. I've crossed a line, and there's no going back. The next morning, I wake up to the sound of my phone buzzing. It's Mike. "Everything's clean," he says. "No trace left behind." "You're in the clear." I want to believe him, but the guilt is still there, heavy and suffocating. "What if he remembers what?" I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. "He won't," Mike assures me. "Even if he does, he's got nothing on you." I hang up, feeling a sick sense of relief, but it doesn't last. I know this isn't over. It's just beginning. The day drags on, each hour ticking by with agonizing slowness. I can't concentrate on anything. my mind constantly drifting back to what I've done. I see his face everywhere, hear the sound of his bones breaking every time I close my eyes. That evening, she comes home, acting like everything is normal. She kisses me on the cheek, asks about my day. I feel a surge of anger, but I push it down. I can't let her see what I'm feeling. As we sit down for dinner, she reaches across the table, placing her hand on mine. Her touch used to send a thrill through me, but now it just feels cold, alien. I pull my hand away, unable to meet her eyes. "What's wrong?" she asks, her voice tinged with concern. "Nothing," I lie, forcing a smile. "Just tired." She nods, accepting my excuse, but I can see the doubt in her eyes. She knows something is off, but she doesn't press. Instead, she leans back, sipping her wine, and I watch her, wondering how I ever thought I knew her. That night, as we lie in bed, she reaches for me, her hands sliding under the covers, seeking me out. There was a time when I would have welcomed her touch, but now it feels like a violation. I turn away, pretending to be asleep, but I can feel her frustration, her confusion. The guilt and shame are suffocating, but I can't let her see it. I have to keep up the facade, keep pretending that everything is fine. But deep down, I know it's only a matter of time before it all comes crashing down. In the darkness, I hear her soft, steady breathing as she drifts off to sleep. I lie awake, staring into the void, knowing that I've set something in motion that I can't stop. The line has been crossed, and there's no going back. Mike and I drag him out of the car, his body limp and unresponsive. The secluded spot we chose is perfect, quiet, far from any prying eyes. The night air is cool, but the adrenaline coursing through my veins keeps me warm. As we lay him on the ground, a part of me is satisfied. This is what he deserves. I've imagined this moment 1,000 times, each one more brutal than the last. But now that I'm here, standing over him with the bat in my hand, I feel something else. Doubt, gnawing at the edges of my anger. Mike lights a cigarette, taking a long drag before exhaling slowly. He's always been the calm one, the one who keeps his head when things get rough. He looks at me, his eyes unreadable. "You ready?" I nod, but the knot in my stomach tightens. I raise the bat, aiming for his knee, just like we planned. I hesitate for a second, but then I swing. The sound is sickening, a dull crack that echoes through the stillness of the night. His body jerks, even in his unconscious state. I feel a twisted sense of satisfaction, but it's fleeting, quickly replaced by a wave of nausea. "Keep going," Mike says, his voice steady. I nod again, swinging the bat down on his other knee, his ankle, his groin. Each hit feels like I'm driving a nail into my own soul, but I can't stop. I have to finish what I started. The man who took everything from me lies broken at my feet, but instead of feeling victorious, I feel hollow. This isn't justice. It's something darker, something I'm not sure I can control. Mike crouches down, checking his pulse, making sure he's still alive. "He'll be feeling that for the rest of his life," he says, his tone almost casual. I stare down at the man, his face a mess of blood and swelling. He's unrecognizable now, just like the person I've become. I was once a man who believed in right and wrong, who believed in love, in loyalty. Now I'm not sure what I believe in anymore. "He's waking up," Mike says, stepping back. I watch as his eyes flutter open, confusion and pain etched across his face. He tries to move, but the agony is too much. He looks up at me, and for a moment I see fear, pure, unfiltered fear. He knows who I am, knows what I've done to him. He starts to beg, his words slurred and desperate. "Please, don't, please." I can barely understand him, but the tone is unmistakable. He's pleading for his life. The bat slips from my hand, falling to the ground with a thud. I take a step back, the reality of what I've done crashing over me like a tidal wave. This isn't who I am, or at least it wasn't who I thought I was. Mike grabs my arm, pulling me away. "We need to go." "Now." I nod, unable to tear my eyes away from the man on the ground. He's barely conscious, but he's alive. I thought this would make me feel better, that it would give me some sense of closure, but all I feel is sick, disgusted with myself. We leave him there, broken and bleeding, and I drive in silence, the weight of my actions pressing down on me like a vice. Mike doesn't say much, just lights another cigarette and stares out the window. When we reach the spot where I'm supposed to drop him off, he finally speaks. "You did what you had to do," he says, as if that makes it better. "Did I?" I ask, my voice barely a whisper. He looks at me, his expression unreadable. "You can't undo it, so don't waste your time regretting it." I nod, but his words offer no comfort. I watch him get out of the car, disappearing into the night, and then I drive home, the silence in the car suffocating. When I pull into the driveway, the house is dark, and for a brief moment, I consider just driving away, leaving everything behind. But I know I can't. I've gone too far to turn back now. I step inside, the familiar smell of our home hitting me like a punch to the gut. I feel like an intruder, like I don't belong here anymore. I make my way to the bedroom where she's already asleep, her breathing soft and steady. I stand there for a long time, watching her, wondering how everything went so wrong. I slip into bed, careful not to wake her. The sheets feel cold against my skin, and I lie there staring at the ceiling, replaying the night's events over and over in my mind. The sound of the bat connecting with his bones, the look of fear in his eyes, the way his blood pooled on the ground. It's all burned into my memory, and I know it will haunt me for the rest of my life. The next morning, I wake up to the sound of her voice. She's in the kitchen, humming softly as she makes breakfast. I sit up, the weight of what I've done pressing down on me like a boulder. I force myself to get out of bed, to go through the motions of a normal day, but nothing feels normal anymore. She greets me with a smile, but I can't return it. I can barely look at her. Every time I do, I see the betrayal, the lies, the reason I became this monster. But I also see the woman I once loved, the woman I'm supposed to protect. "Are you okay?" she asks, her voice filled with concern. I nod, forcing a smile. "Just tired." She reaches out, placing her hand on mine. Her touch is warm, comforting, but it only makes me feel worse. I pull my hand away, pretending to be distracted by something on the table. She frowns but doesn't push. "I have to run some errands today. Do you need anything?" I shake my head, not trusting myself to speak. She leaves a few minutes later, and I'm left alone in the silence of our home. I can't escape the thoughts that plague me, can't drown out the sound of his pleas for mercy. I thought this would be the end, that I could finally move on, but it's only made everything worse. I spend the day in a daze, going through the motions, but not really present. I don't know how to fix this, don't know how to come back from what I've done. Part of me wonders if I even deserve to. When she comes home that evening, I can tell something is off. She's quiet, distant, and there's a tension in the air that wasn't there before. I try to ignore it, but it's impossible. Every time she looks at me, I feel like she knows, like she can see the guilt written all over my face. We sit down for dinner, but the silence between us is deafening. She barely touches her food, and I can't bring myself to eat. Finally, she puts down her fork, looking at me with those eyes that used to make me feel like I was the only man in the world. "David, what's going on? You've been so distant lately. Is something wrong?" I freeze, my mind racing. I want to tell her everything, to spill my darkest secrets, but I can't. I'm too deep in this lie, too far gone. So I shake my head, forcing another smile. "Everything's fine." She doesn't believe me. I can see it in her eyes, but she doesn't push. Instead, she stands up, taking her plate to the sink. I watch her, feeling the distance between us grow with every passing second. This is what my life has become, a series of lies, of half-truths and secrets that threaten to consume me. That night, I lie in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The house is too quiet, the silence too loud. I can't escape the thoughts in my head, can't drown out the sound of his voice, the memory of his broken body lying on the ground. I hear her breathing beside me, soft and steady, and I wonder how she can sleep so peacefully when everything is falling apart. I turn over looking at her, and for a moment, I feel a surge of anger. She's the reason I did this, the reason I've become this monster. But as I watch her, that anger fades, replaced by something else. Fear. I'm afraid of what I've done, of what I'm becoming. I'm afraid that this will never end, that I'll be trapped in this nightmare forever. I thought I could handle it, thought I could control it, but I was wrong. The line has been crossed, and there's no going back. As I lie there, the weight of my actions pressing down on me like a boulder, I realize something. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. And I'm not sure I'm ready for what's coming next. The next few days are a blur, a hazy mess of guilt, fear, and an overwhelming sense of dread. I can't shake the image of his face from my mind. Bloody, swollen, and filled with a fear that mirrors my own. Every time I close my eyes, I see him, lying there begging for mercy. It's like a loop, playing over and over, taunting me, reminding me of what I've done. I barely leave the house. The walls feel like they're closing in, suffocating me. I can't escape the thoughts, the endless cycle of regret and anger. The guilt is eating me alive, but so is the anger. I'm angry at him for taking what was mine, angry at her for betraying me, and angry at myself for letting it all happen. But most of all, I'm angry because I don't know how to make it stop. Mike calls every day, checking in, making sure I'm keeping it together. He's calm, collected, as if what we did was just another day at the office. "You're overthinking it," he says when I voice my fears. He won't talk. Even if he does, there's no way to tie it back to us. We covered our tracks. But his reassurances do nothing to quell the storm inside me. I'm not like Mike. I can't just compartmentalize it, shove it into a box and lock it away. It's there, festering, growing like a cancer, and I know it's only a matter of time before it consumes me completely. I avoid her as much as I can. When she's home, I make excuses to leave, to be anywhere but near her. I can't stand the sight of her, the sound of her voice. Every time I look at her, all I see is betrayal. But there's something else too, something I can't quite put my finger on. She's been quiet, distant, watching me with those calculating eyes. I know she suspects something, but I don't know how much she knows. The tension between us is like a ticking bomb, and I can feel it getting closer to exploding with each passing day. The nights are the worst, lying next to her in bed, feeling the warmth of her body, but knowing that there's a chasm between us that can never be bridged. She reaches for me sometimes, her hands tentative, searching for the connection we once had. But I can't give it to her. I turn away, pretending to be asleep, but I know she's not fooled. One night after she's drifted off, I can't take it anymore. I slip out of bed, careful not to wake her, and head downstairs. The house is dark, the only light coming from the moon filtering through the windows. I pour myself a drink, the burn of the whiskey doing little to numb the pain. I sit there in the dark, replaying everything in my head, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. That's when I hear it, a soft creak, the sound of footsteps on the stairs. I freeze, the glass halfway to my lips. She appears in the doorway, her silhouette framed by the dim light. She's wearing the silk robe I bought her last Christmas, the one she used to wear when we were happy, when things were good between us. "What are you doing down here?" she asks, her voice soft, cautious. "I couldn't sleep," I say, setting the glass down. She walks over, her bare feet barely making a sound on the hardwood floor. She sits down next to me, close enough that I can smell the familiar scent of her perfume. It used to drive me wild, but now it just makes me sick. "David, what's going on?" she asks, her hand reaching out to touch mine. I flinch, pulling away before she can make contact. "Nothing," I lie, staring at the amber liquid in the glass. "Don't lie to me," she says, her voice hardening. "I know something's wrong. You've been different, distant. You're not the same." I don't know what to say. I can't tell her the truth, but I also can't keep lying. The words are stuck in my throat, choking me. "Please, just talk to me," she pleads, her eyes searching mine. "We can fix this, whatever it is. We can get through it." I laugh, a bitter, hollow sound. There's nothing to fix. David, she starts, but I cut her off. Stop, I say, my voice sharp. Just stop. You don't get to pretend like everything's fine. You don't get to act like we can just go back to the way things were. Her eyes fill with tears, but I don't care. I'm too far gone, too wrapped up in my own misery to care about her feelings. She doesn't say anything for a long time, just sits there, staring at me like she's trying to figure out who I am. Finally, she stands up, wrapping the robe tighter around her. I'm going to bed, she says, her voice barely above a whisper. Go ahead, I say, not looking at her. She hesitates like she wants to say something else, but then she turns and walks away, leaving me alone in the dark. I sit there for a long time, the silence pressing down on me like a weight. I don't know how long I stay there, but eventually I get up, pouring the rest of the whiskey down the sink before heading back upstairs. When I crawl into bed, she's already asleep, or at least pretending to be. I lie there staring at the ceiling, knowing that this can't go on much longer. Something has to give. The next day, everything changes. I wake up late, the sun already high in the sky. She's not in bed, and I feel a pang of unease. I get dressed quickly, heading downstairs to find her. But the house is empty. Her car is gone, and there's a note on the kitchen counter. Gone out. Be back later. It's not like her to leave without saying anything. I stare at the note, a sense of dread creeping over me. Something's wrong. I can feel it. I try calling her, but it goes straight to voicemail. I leave a message, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. Hours pass, and still no word from her. I pace the house, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. What if she's gone to the police? What if she knows what I did? The thought makes my blood run cold. I try calling Mike, but he doesn't answer either. It's like the world is closing in on me, and I'm trapped, unable to breathe. Finally, just as the sun is starting to set, I hear the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. I rush to the window, relief flooding through me when I see her car. But the relief is short-lived. As she steps out, I see that she's not alone. Mike is with her. My heart stops. They walk up to the house together, talking in low voices. I can't hear what they're saying, but the look on her face tells me everything I need to know. She knows. Somehow she knows. I back away from the window, my mind racing. What do I do? Do I run? Do I confront them? Every instinct is screaming at me to get out, but my feet are rooted to the spot. The door opens and they walk in. She sees me first, her expression unreadable. Mike follows, his face a mask of calm. He looks at me, then at her, and I see the unspoken communication between them. David, she says, her voice steady, controlled. We need to talk. I swallow hard, my throat dry. What's going on? She takes a deep breath, her eyes never leaving mine. I know what you did. My heart plummets. I try to play dumb, but it's no use. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, she snaps, her voice rising. I know everything. I know about you and Mike, about what you did to him. The room spins, my legs feeling like they might give out. How do you know? She glances at Mike, who's standing there with his arms crossed, watching me closely. He told me, she says, her voice trembling with anger. He told me everything. I turn to Mike, my mind reeling. Why would you? Mike shrugs, his expression indifferent. You were losing it, David. I had to do something. I can't believe what I'm hearing. The betrayal is like a knife to the gut. You set me up. He doesn't deny it. You were going to get caught eventually. This way, we can control the damage. I feel sick, my head spinning. This can't be happening. I trusted him, and he sold me out. And she's known all along. What do you want from me? I ask, my voice breaking. She steps forward, her eyes cold, unforgiving. I want you to leave. I want you out of my life. The words hit me like a slap to the face. You can't just... Yes, I can, she interrupts, her voice hard. You think I'm going to stay with you after what you've done? After you nearly killed a man? You're a monster, David, and I want nothing. The silence that follows her words is deafening. I stand there, my mind spinning, trying to process what she just said. She knows everything about Mike, about the attack, about the man I've become. The realization hits me like a sledgehammer. There's no way out of this. I've crossed a line I can't uncross, and now I'm facing the consequences. What do you mean you want me out? I ask, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. She stares at me, her eyes cold, unyielding. I mean exactly what I said. I want you out of my life. You're not the man I married. You're a monster, and I don't want anything to do with you anymore. Her words cut deep, deeper than I expected. I thought I'd prepared myself for this, but hearing it out loud is something else entirely. I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, staring down into an abyss, and there's nothing to hold on to. Mike stands in the background, silent, his expression unreadable. I can't believe he betrayed me like this. After everything we've been through, after all the blood and sweat we've shared, he's the one who turned me in. The anger bubbles up again, hot and suffocating, but I push it down. There's no point in losing control now, not when everything's already falling apart. So what now, I ask, my voice hoarse. You're just going to kick me out? Pretend like I never existed? She doesn't hesitate. Yes, I've already spoken to a lawyer. We're done, David. I'll be filing for divorce, and I don't want to see you again. The finality of her words sends a chill down my spine. I knew things were bad, but I never thought it would come to this. A part of me wants to fight it, to argue, to beg her to reconsider, but I know it's pointless. There's nothing left to save. What about everything else, I ask, glancing at Micah, who's still standing there, watching us like he's waiting for something. We'll deal with it, she says, her tone dismissive. Mike will make sure nothing comes back to you, but you need to disappear. Leave town, leave the state. Whatever you need to do, just go. Disappearing is the best option, Mike adds, finally speaking up. If you stay, you're just making things harder for everyone, especially yourself. I want to argue to tell them both to go to hell, but the truth is, they're right. I've dug myself into a hole so deep, the only way out is to bury myself in it. If I stay, I'm just asking for trouble. And I'm too tired, too broken to keep fighting. Fine, I say, my voice flat, emotionless. I'll go. She nods, relief flickering across her face. Good. I think it's the best thing for both of us. I look at her, at the woman I once loved, the woman I built a life with, and I feel nothing. The man I was, the man who loved her, is gone. All that's left is a hollow shell, a ghost of the person I used to be. I'll pack my things, I say, turning away from them. I can't stand to look at her anymore. Can't stand to see the hatred and disgust in her eyes. It's easier this way, easier to just walk away. I head upstairs to the bedroom we once shared, the place where our life together began and ended. The bed is unmade, the sheets still tangled from the night before. I move mechanically, grabbing clothes, stuffing them into a suitcase without thinking. It doesn't matter what I take with me. None of it means anything anymore. As I pack, my mind drifts to the man I left broken and bleeding in the woods. The image of his battered face, his pleas for mercy, haunts me. I thought hurting him would make me feel better, would give me some sense of closure. But all it's done is drag me deeper into this pit of despair. I don't recognize myself anymore. The man I see in the mirror is a stranger, someone I don't know and don't want to know. I hear footsteps behind me and turn to see her standing in the doorway. She's watching me, her expression unreadable. For a moment, we just stare at each other, the silence between us heavy with everything we're not saying. I never wanted it to be like this, she says finally, her voice soft, almost sad. Neither did I reply, and it's the truth. I never imagined our life would come to this ugly, twisted end. But it has, and there's no going back. I'm sorry, David, she says. And for a moment, I see a flicker of the woman I once loved, the woman who stood by my side through everything. But it's gone as quickly as it came, replaced by the cold, distant person she's become. Me too, I say, and I mean it. I'm sorry for everything, for the lies, the betrayal, the violence. But most of all, I'm sorry for losing myself along the way. She nods, then turns and walks away, leaving me alone to finish packing. I close the suitcase, the sound of the zipper loud in the quiet room. It feels final, like the last chapter of a book I never wanted to read. I take one last look around the room, at the life I'm leaving behind, and then I walk out, closing the door behind me. The weight of everything I've done, everything I've lost, presses down on me, but I force myself to keep moving. Downstairs, Mike is waiting by the door. He looks at me, his expression unreadable, and I wonder if he feels any guilt, any remorse for what he's done. But I don't ask. I don't care. It doesn't matter anymore. "Where will you go?" he asks as I step outside. "Don't know," I say, my voice flat. "Does it matter?" He shrugs. "Not really. Just make sure you don't come back." I nod, not trusting myself to speak. I walk to my car, the suitcase heavy in my hand, and toss it into the back seat. As I climb into the driver's seat, I take one last look at the house, at the life I'm leaving behind, and then I start the engine. The tires crunch on the gravel as I pull out of the driveway, the house growing smaller in the rearview mirror until it's just a speck on the horizon. I don't know where I'm going, and I don't care. All I know is that I need to get as far away from here as possible. The miles blur together as I drive, the scenery changing from city to country, the buildings giving way to trees and open fields. I don't have a destination in mind, just a need to keep moving, to put as much distance between myself and my past as I can. Hours pass, the sun setting behind me, casting long shadows across the road. I drive through the night, the darkness a comforting shroud, hiding me from the world, from myself. Eventually, I find myself on a deserted stretch of highway, the only light coming from the headlights of my car. I pull over to the side of the road, the engine ticking as it cools. I sit there for a long time, staring out into the darkness, my mind numb, empty. I don't know how long I sit there, but eventually I get out of the car, the cool night air biting at my skin. I walk a few steps away from the car, the gravel crunching under my boots, and then I stop, staring up at the sky. The stars are bright, scattered across the inky blackness like diamonds. I used to love looking at the stars, used to find comfort in their distant beauty. But now all I feel is emptiness, a void where my soul used to be. I stand there for what feels like hours, the cold seeping into my bones, but I don't move. I don't know where to go, what to do. I'm lost, adrift in a sea of my own making, with no way out. Finally, I turn and walk back to the car. I climb inside, the cold leather seats offering no comfort. I sit there, my hands gripping the steering wheel, my mind blank. And then, without thinking, I start the engine and drive away, the darkness swallowing me whole. I keep driving, the miles stretching out behind me. But no matter how far I go, I can't escape the weight of what I've done. Every turn of the road feels like another step toward the inevitable, the consequences of my actions looming over me like a dark cloud. I can't stop thinking about the man I was and the man I've become. The transformation is complete. I'm a monster now, just as she said. I pull into a dingy motel on the outskirts of a town I don't even know the name of. The neon sign flickers, casting a sickly glow over the parking lot. I check in, barely registering the clerk's indifferent expression as he hands me a key. The room is as bleak as I expected. A bed with a threadbare comforter, a TV that looks like it hasn't worked in years, and a window that doesn't quite shut all the way. I throw my bag on the floor and collapse onto the bed, the springs creaking under my weight. I'm exhausted, but sleep won't come. My mind is racing, replaying everything that's happened, everything that's led me to this moment. I close my eyes, but the darkness behind my eyelids is filled with images I can't bear to see. His face twisted in pain and fear, her eyes cold and accusing, Mike's betrayal, cutting deeper than any wound. I lie there for hours, the minutes ticking by in agonizing silence. The night feels endless, the darkness pressing in on me from all sides. I keep thinking about what Mike said, about disappearing, starting over. But how do you start over when you've destroyed everything that mattered? How do you build a new life when you can't even recognize the person you've become? I don't know how long I lie there staring at the ceiling, but eventually I can't take it anymore. I need to move, to do something, anything, to drown out the thoughts in my head. I grab my bag and leave the room, the cool night air hitting me like a slap in the face. I start walking, not caring where I'm going, just needing to put distance between myself and the motel, between myself and my thoughts. The streets are empty, the town asleep. I walk aimlessly, my feet carrying me through the deserted streets, past darkened storefronts and shuttered windows. I keep walking until I find myself at the edge of town, the road stretching out before me, disappearing into the darkness. I stand there for a long time, staring at the empty road, wondering if I should just keep going, walk until I can't walk anymore, until there's nothing left. But something stops me, a voice in the back of my mind, faint but persistent, telling me that I can't run forever, that eventually I'll have to face what I've done, face the consequences, no matter how much I want to avoid them. I turn around, heading back the way I came, the weight of my actions pressing down on me with every step. When I get back to the motel, the sun is just starting to rise, casting a pale light over the bleak landscape. I feel like a ghost, moving through a world that's no longer mine. I return to my room, but I don't lie down. I sit on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, trying to figure out what to do next. The hours pass, and I finally reach a decision. I can't keep running. I can't keep pretending that I can escape what I've done. It's time to face the music, no matter how much it terrifies me. I pick up the phone, my hands shaking as I dial Mike's number. It rings twice before he picks up. "David," he says, his voice flat, emotionless. "Where are you?" "I'm at a motel," I say, my voice sounding strange like it's coming from someone else. "I can't do this anymore, Mike. I can't run." There's a long pause and I can hear him breathing on the other end. Finally, he speaks. "You don't have a choice. If you stay, you're going to get caught. You know that." "I don't care," I say, and I realize it's true. I'm tired of running, tired of hiding. I just want it to be over. "I'm going back." "What?" His voice is sharp, almost panicked. "You can't go back, David. They'll lock you up." "Maybe I deserve it," I say quietly. There's another long silence, and when he speaks again, his voice is low, almost pleading. "Don't do this, man. Don't throw your life away. We can figure this out." "I've already thrown it away," I say, the truth of it sinking in. "There's nothing left, Mike. I can't keep living like this." He doesn't say anything, and I can hear the sound of traffic in the background, the distant hum of the city. Finally, he sighs. "If you're sure about this, then you need to know what you're getting into." "I know," I say, and I do. I know that going back means facing the consequences, facing her, facing everything I've done. But I also know that it's the only way to find any kind of peace, any kind of redemption. "I'll help you," he says finally, and I can hear the resignation in his voice. "But you need to be ready for what comes next." "I am," I say, and for the first time in a long time, I feel a sense of clarity, of purpose. I know what I need to do, and I'm ready to face it. Mike gives me the details, the things I need to know, the people I need to contact. He tells me about the lawyer he knows, someone who can help me, someone who can negotiate a deal. It all feels surreal, like I'm planning someone else's life, someone else's downfall. But it's my life, my choices, and I have to own them. When we hang up, I sit there for a long time, the phone still in my hand, the weight of the decision settling over me like a blanket. I feel numb, but there's also a sense of relief, like a burden has been lifted. I'm not running anymore. I'm not hiding. I'm going to face this head on, no matter what it costs me. The next few days are a blur of meetings, of phone calls, of paperwork. Mike's lawyer is good, better than I expected. He's sharp, ruthless, and he doesn't pull any punches. He tells me what to expect, what the best case scenario is, what the worst case scenario is. None of it is good, but I knew that going in. Through it all, I keep thinking about her, about the life we had, the life we lost. I wonder if she'll be there, if she'll look at me with the same cold, unforgiving eyes, or if there's still a part of her that remembers the man I used to be. But I know it doesn't matter. She made her choice, and I made mine. There's no going back. The day finally comes. The day I've been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. I'm dressed in a suit, the same one I wore on our wedding day. It feels like a mockery, like a cruel joke, but it's the only suit I have. I drive to the courthouse, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turn white. When I arrive, the parking lot is full, the courthouse buzzing with activity. I feel like I'm walking into the lion's den, every step heavy with dread. I see Mike waiting for me, his expression unreadable. He gives me a nod, and we walk in together, the weight of what's about to happen pressing down on us. The courtroom is cold, sterile, the air thick with tension. I sit at the defendant's table, my lawyer beside me, his briefcase full of papers, of arguments, of defenses. I glance around the room, my eyes scanning the faces of the people I once knew, the people I once trusted, and then I see her. She's sitting in the front row, her hands folded in her lap, her face pale but composed. She doesn't look at me, doesn't acknowledge my presence. It's like I'm invisible, like I don't exist. The sight of her sends a jolt of pain through me, but I push it down, focusing on what's about to happen. The trial begins, the prosecutor laying out the charges, the evidence, the witnesses. It's a blur of words, of legal jargon, of accusations and counter-arguments. I feel detached, like I'm watching it all from a distance, like it's happening to someone else. But then they start talking about him, about what I did to him, and the reality of it all crashes down on me like a tidal wave. They bring him in, and I can barely look at him. He's walking with a cane, his face still scarred, his eyes full of pain and hatred. He doesn't say anything, but he doesn't have to. His presence alone is enough to condemn me. The trial drags on, each day a new onslaught of accusations, of evidence, of testimonies. I listen to it all, numb and detached, but inside I'm falling apart. I know how this ends. I knew it the moment I decided to come back. There's no redemption here, no salvation, only judgment, and I'm ready to face it. Finally, the day comes when the verdict is read, the judge's voice. The judge's voice cuts through the courtroom, delivering the verdict that seals my fate. Guilty. The word echoes in my mind, bouncing off the walls of my consciousness, but it's not a surprise. I knew it was coming. I feel the weight of it settle on my shoulders, heavier than anything I've ever carried. I glance over at her sitting in the front row, her face a mask of composure. She doesn't flinch, doesn't react, just stares straight ahead as if I don't exist. It's like a final nail in the coffin of whatever we had. The gavel strikes, and it's over. The courtroom begins to clear, people shuffling out, their murmurs blending into a low hum. I stand there numb as the bailiff approaches to take me away. My lawyer's talking to me, his voice a distant drone, but I can't focus on the words. It's all white noise. I'm in a daze, floating above the scene, disconnected from everything. As I'm let out, I catch one last glimpse of her. She's talking to someone, maybe Mike, I can't tell, and for a moment, her eyes meet mine. There's nothing there. No anger, no sadness, no regret, just emptiness. It's like looking into a mirror and seeing the void where my soul used to be. Then she turns away and I'm gone, swallowed by the cold corridors of the courthouse. The next few hours pass in a blur. Processing, paperwork, the sterile efficiency of the justice system grinding me down to nothing. I'm just another case, another file to be shuffled through the system. They strip me of everything, my clothes, my dignity, and replace it with the orange jumpsuit that marks me as a convict. It's a brand, a scarlet letter that tells the world I'm no longer a man, just a number in a cell. They lock me up, the door clanging shut with a finality that sends a shiver down my spine. The cell is small, barely enough room to move. The walls are close, closing in on me, and the air is stale, thick with the scent of despair. I sit on the hard cot, my head in my hands, and for the first time, I let myself feel it. The crushing weight of everything I've done, everything I've lost. The man I used to be is gone, buried under layers of guilt, anger, and regret. I don't even recognize myself anymore. Days blend into nights, time losing all meaning in this place. The routine is mind-numbing, designed to strip away any sense of individuality, to reduce us all to the same faceless mass. I go through the motions, but I'm not really there. My mind drifts, lost in a haze of memories, regrets, and what-ifs. I think about her, about the life we had, the life we could have had, if only things had been different, but it's too late for that now. Weeks pass, and the outside world fades away, replaced by the cold, harsh reality of prison life. I adapt because that's what you do to survive. You bury the pain, the guilt, deep inside, and you focus on getting through each day. But no matter how hard I try, I can't escape the thoughts that plague me. The faces of those I've hurt, those I've betrayed, haunt me, their voices whispering in the darkness. I start to wonder if there's any way out of this, any way to find redemption, to make amends for what I've done. But every time I think about it, I come up empty. How do you atone for ruining lives, for breaking the people you once loved? How do you find forgiveness when you can't even forgive yourself? The days drag on, each one a repeat of the last, until I lose track of time completely. I exist in a fog, moving through the motions but never really living. And then one day something changes. I'm sitting in the yard staring at the concrete walls when a guard calls my name. I look up and he tells me I have a visitor. The words don't make sense at first. I haven't had a visitor since the trial, since I was locked away. I follow him, my mind racing with possibilities, but none of them prepare me for what I see when I enter the visiting room. She's there, sitting at the table, waiting for me. My heart lurches in my chest, a mix of hope and fear crashing over me. I don't know why she's here, what she wants, but I can't stay away. I sit down across from her, the barrier between us feeling more like a chasm. For a long time, neither of us speaks. We just sit there, the silence thick and suffocating. I don't know what to say, don't know how to bridge the gap between us. Finally, she breaks the silence. "I wanted to see you," she says, her voice soft, almost hesitant. "Why?" I ask, my voice rough from disuse. "I don't understand. After everything, why would she come here?" She looks down at her hands, twisting them together in her lap. "I don't know," she admits. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened, about us. I don't know why I'm here, but I needed to see you." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I've spent so long imagining this moment, dreaming about what I'd say if I ever got the chance. But now that it's here, I don't know what to do. I want to reach out to her, to tell her I'm sorry, that I'd take it all back if I could, but I can't. The words are stuck in my throat, choked by the weight of everything that's happened. She looks up at me, and for the first time I see something in her eyes. It's not anger or hatred or even pity. It's something deeper, something I can't quite name. "I've been thinking," she says, her voice barely above a whisper, "about forgiveness, about whether it's possible to forgive someone who's hurt you so deeply." Her words hang in the air between us, and I feel my heart start to race. Forgiveness. The one thing I thought I'd never get, the one thing I don't deserve. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she continues, her voice trembling, "but I want to try. I don't want to carry this hate with me anymore. It's eating me alive." I stare at her, the enormity of her words crashing over me. She wants to try. She's willing to try. It's more than I could have ever hoped for, more than I deserve. I don't know if I can be redeemed, if I can ever make up for what I've done. But maybe, just maybe, there's a sliver of hope. "Thank you," I say, my voice breaking. "It's all I can manage, but it's enough." She nods and we sit there in silence. The distance between us still vast, but no longer insurmountable. There's a long road ahead, full of pain and regret, but for the first time, I feel like there's a way forward. A way to rebuild, to find some semblance of peace. As she stands to leave, she looks back at me, and there's a flicker of something in her eyes. It's not love, not yet, but it's something close, and it's enough to give me hope. As the door closes behind her, I realize that this isn't the end of my story. It's just the beginning of a new chapter. One where I try to find redemption, where I try to rebuild the life I've shattered. It won't be easy, and I may never fully succeed. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like it's worth trying. I stand there alone in the visiting room, the echoes of our conversation still ringing in my ears. I don't know what the future holds, don't know if I'll ever truly be free from the darkness inside me. But I do know one thing. I'm not giving up. Not yet. There's still a chance, however small, to make things right, and I'm going to take it. With that thought in mind, I turn and walk back to my cell, the first steps on a long road to redemption. The path ahead is uncertain, fraught with challenges, but for the first time, I'm ready to face them. Ready to fight for whatever future I can salvage from the wreckage of my past. It's not much, but it's a start, and for now that's enough.